Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Good evening, everyone. How are we? Well, this side of the room is awesome. What about this side of the room? How are we? Good. Welcome to Startup Grind in Bali. Who's been before? Who's experienced a... Nick has, because he's been interviewed. So Startup Grind is actually a global initiative to inspire and connect and educate people around the world. It's for entrepreneurs. So what we do is we're in 110 countries, so 250 cities. What we'll be doing is filming it down the back, and this goes live, so it's streamed out to all the others that can attend. So you don't need to actually be within the country to experience the interviews. So you can go onto the Startup Grind website and watch everybody else that's done interviews. And there's phenomenal people that are being interviewed. And tonight, without exception, we've got an amazing man who is here to share his story with us. So I haven't said my name is Terry Billington, so just to give you a little bit of an update on who I am. So I'm a global lead facilitator for iLab, which is a program that runs here. We've got a few people that are sitting in the back at the moment. And it's an entrepreneur accelerator program that we run for 2 weeks at a time. And we're just about finished. We've only got a couple more days until we've finished this program. And I also am a business coach and business owner in my own right. So I've got my own company called TCB, which I coach people globally as well. In particular, I coach coaches how to be fantastic coaches. On that note, so I don't need to keep talking about myself, I do want to introduce our guest for tonight. Chandresh is also here as part of the iLab group, but as a lead mentor. So he is a mentor, he's an entrepreneur, and he's an investor. And he has got an amazing story he's going to share. But he's been actually at the iLab programs for the last program and this one. So everyone that's attended has been very blessed to have Chandresh here and sharing his wisdom, as I'm sure that the ladies that are attending iLab will attest to. So on that note, without any further ado, let's bring Chandresh up to the front. Thanks, Chandresh.
Evening all, how are we doing? Yeah, thank you very much for coming along. Yeah, really looking forward to sharing some of my stories and hopefully inspiring you, because that's really the goal of Startup Grind, right?
It absolutely is, Chandresh. So thanks for coming along tonight.
My
and
pleasure.
you didn't have to walk far, just from your
true,
room,
yeah.
your room there. So really excited to have you share a little bit about you to those that don't know you, and more about you for those that are actually in the room that do.
Yeah.
So would you like to start off by just giving us a bit of an insight into where your entrepreneurial journey started, or where your journey started of even thinking about business?
So my background is I started, as you probably gathered, I'm not from Australia, I'm not from Bali, I'm from the UK, so I'm British Asian. I've lived in the UK all of my life. So I was brought up in inner city areas, in pretty rough kind of areas, right? So inner city Birmingham. Any of you know the UK at all? Right, okay. Now, Birmingham is not the most prettiest place, right? Which I'm sure some of you understand. And I was brought up in inner city Birmingham, and it was, let's say, interesting. It was a bit like the hood, right? So going to school in inner cities is, how should we say, quite an experience, right? And it's quite a challenge, and it really takes quite a strong character to really get through that kind of educational system, because everything's against you. And the idea is that, you really have to kind of be focused and dedicated to try and get through that. And I think that really helped, really swimming against the tide, because everything was against us in the schools. It was a rough school. We had pretty interesting characters in the school. It was really mixed ability and crazy people and crazy stuff going on. And what that taught me is really that, if you could get through that and, be really focused, then actually you could overcome obstacles, and, your background actually doesn't make any difference. So, you don't have to start with a privileged background. You could really get somewhere. But what it also taught me And this is one of the reasons why I'm really passionate about being here and, sharing my story, is there were people there, and good friends of mine, who had as much ability, and as much skill, and had all the potential. But basically, we were in a place where you had a choice. You could choose to take the positive path, or there's tremendous pressure to go along the negative path. And within that kind of context, there was so much peer pressure to kind of go along the negative path and join gangs and stuff like that. And it really took strength of character. And I saw some good friends of mine, going off on the wrong, what I call the wrong path, which was a shame. And that was just such wasted potential. So I'm really passionate about people not wasting that potential, because they have the skills, and yet the current system is causing these people to not succeed. So after school...
Can I just interrupt there?
Yeah.
What is it that you think put you in a position where you saw to go in a more positive path? Because like you said, you had those options that you could do that. And there's, who's been to a school like that before that can relate to say you've been to a school that's not as good, so your pathway can be this or that. And majority might go in a path that's not conducive to where your future could be, but you choose the other way, which is the minimal number of people. So what helped you make that decision?
I think a lot of it was around family, right? Your family and your upbringing has a big bearing, because that's where we all get our values from. And I was quite fortunate because I had a very strong family with very strong values. And that gave me a really solid grounding, and, really about working hard and, dedication and, ethics. Being ethical is one of the strong values that that's really ingrained in. And working hard, my father had a jewelry business, and, he, in a way, was an entrepreneur. He was an entrepreneur. He ran his own business, right? So that was kind of entrepreneurial. So I think it was all around the family. I think, if you have a solid grounding, that builds your value system, and that stays with you. I think even now, that stays with people. So.
Okay, so what happened from there? What happened from school?
So what happened? I went out to university. I didn't know what to do, but what I was fascinated by is really figuring out how things worked. So I was really keen on understanding the world and really understanding how things worked. And so I chose physics, right? So physics is all about just understanding how things work. But not just physics, because I didn't want to just understand for the sake of it. What I wanted to do was really understand, but then do something with it. So I was quite fortunate because I found a course which was physics plus applied physics. So understanding how things work, but then applying it. And I was quite fortunate, I did a double degree and, studied physics, but the applied was absolutely brilliant, because it was all about doing something useful with it. So that was absolutely fantastic. And that was in Nottingham, so I really enjoyed that. Had a great time there. And physics is an amazing subject, right? So I don't know, most of you know Elon Musk, right? Elon Musk? Anyone not know Elon Musk? Right? So what he does is when he's looking at a problem, he takes everything back to the fundamentals, and he looks at the basic physics of a problem. So when he was looking at SpaceX and the fundamentals of rocket propulsion, he just took it back to the basics and said, well, okay, so what do we need? What are the basics? When he was looking at powering the cars in Tesla, the battery, he just took it back to the basic physics and said, okay, so what do we need? We need this, this, and this. So it gave me an amazing grounding in really deciphering and taking things apart, and then looking at really creative ways to put things together, which has been really useful.
Okay, so when you were studying that, did you have a vision of what you wanted to do with your physics once you left university?
Not really. When you're young, I don't know about you, but you have no idea, right? I mean, and most people, even when they get older, they have no idea. It's kind of a journey. You kind of think I had this inkling that I wanted to invent things. So, in those days, the term entrepreneurship wasn't really that used, but I had a kind of idea that I wanted to invent, right? Invention was the kind of thing at that time. There weren't many jobs for inventors, in quotes. But what I wanted to do is, actually find better ways to do things and, leverage the physics and the ideas that I'd created and do something with it. So, and, when you come out of university and you think, well, okay, well, now what do I do? So from there, I went into a technology consultancy because that was really about understanding businesses and then, transforming them and doing something, creating some positive change. So that's where I went into.
That's an interesting step. You come out of university, so you graduated from that, so you're physics, and then you go to technology. So was that a pathway that they introduced at university that you could go into, or was that just something you found an interest in, or was it something that you basically fell into when you got out?
No, it was a definite path, because what it gave me the ability to do is, anyone worked in consultancies? Anyone worked in consultancies around here? Right? No? Okay, so when you work in a consultancy, what it gives you is this amazing ability to work with a number of clients really fast and gain amazing experience really, really quickly. And the big consultancies, they kind of throw you in at the deep end, right? It's really a rapid learning process. And I found that really useful, because it gave me the ability to experience different technologies, but also different businesses. We were moving between different businesses. And the consultancies kind of throw you in at the deep end. There's none of this, okay, the poor, and we'll give you this big induction program. They literally, throw you in at the deep end, and you have to swim, or you sink or swim, right? And if you survive, then you get even more responsibility, and then you get moved to different kinds of clients. And it's a really, really good way of getting rapid experience very, very fast. So I quite enjoyed that. So.
Yeah. So from there, how did you get to the next step? What was the pathway to where you went to next?
So during my journey with the consultancies, we were doing some pretty amazing things. I worked on things like building trading systems. The UK was going through this whole change in the way that electricity was generated and being sold. And it was going through a complete deregulation process, and it was just like a big, big thing. So we were involved in actually building trading systems, which is super exciting. It was just amazing, because we were part of history, and it was really exciting to be, part of making a change. So that really, was something that I was really glad that I was part of, because I was there on day one when they pushed the buttons and they had the trading systems working, and that was wonderful, because part of one of the biggest satisfactions we get when we're working on something is to see something work and actually be part of history. So things like that gave me amazing ability to do that and opportunity to do that. I then moved on to a number of other, major projects, and then really thought, okay, so, let's take the first step towards being my own boss, right? So because I can do this, set up as an independent consultant, did that pretty successfully, and then really thought, well, actually, let's create a proper company. So proper company is basically taking on staff and, actually creating an actual company and taking on staff. And believe me, there's a big difference in working for yourself and creating a company where you're employing a lot of staff. So that was a big change.
So when you first started that, you were actually working on your own, or did you go into business? Was it something that you created yourself, or did you go into your business with somebody else, or how did that work?
No, so this was in the days when the digital media was really taking off, and what I wanted to do is bring the best elements of a management consultancy, because I'd learned about management consultancy. I wanted to bring the best elements of a design agency, because design agencies were really doing amazing things, and also bring the best elements of a technology company as well. And in those days, they were quite separate. And what I saw was the opportunity to bring these disciplines together, and that's where the name came from. Cohesia was all about bringing these things together. It's about cohesion. And I don't know if you've seen my profile, but one of my passions is design. Right? So bringing the creativity, bringing technology, and the business is really the three strands that I am really passionate about, and bringing all of those together was really why I started the company.
And so who were your main clients that actually going back a step, How did you get your first client with
How
that?
did we get a first client? So I'd been working within an area within the energy industry, and we got a call saying, hey, we want a database. And they said, well, okay, but why do you want a database? So I'm one of these people that keep asking the client, well, why do you want this? Why do you? And you always take it back to first principles. And it turned out that they were trying to create a new business, and they wanted to create a change in the organization. And it turned out that the client liked my approach, because it wasn't like a technical approach. You know, if you ask a technical person, you know, I want a database, they'll say, yeah, great, what kind of database? And we'll build one for you. Whereas I was saying, well, why do you want a database? What are you trying to do? What's your business objective? And as it turned out, you know, he was quite taken by that approach, because I was actually taking him back to the first principles of the actual business problem that he was trying to solve. And it turned out that, you know, that resonated with him, and, you know, he became our first client, and we still working with that client within the energy industry. So it's been a really long-term relationship with them. But, you know, getting your first client is so good, right? Getting your first customer, getting your first client, is just the greatest feeling, right? It's amazing. It's, you know, it's just validation, and it's a great thing. Getting the first one, and then getting to 10, and then getting to 100. You know, there's like milestones, but getting the first one is a great feeling.
So how did you, and I know we've been going through this in iLab, the differentiation, how to actually show that client that you have something different than others were already offering. You know,
Sure.
what was it about that they saw it, that they chose you then?
I think it was just the approach, right? Because rather than say, you know, yes, you know, we're going to solve and get into the nuts and bolts, actually taking a step back and thinking about strategy and thinking about what problem people are trying to solve. You know, so few people do that, you know, because when people say, you know, I want one of these, people say, yeah, I've got one of those, and they try and sell them one of those. Whereas if you just keep asking why and what problem are you trying to solve, maybe there's a better way of solving that problem. And that's an approach we've continued to use, you know, and it just means that you get better solutions for clients. And just, you know, it's just a better way of working, and highly recommend that, you know. Just keep asking why. So if somebody says, well, this is what I want, say, sure, but what are you trying to achieve? What's the overall objective of what you're trying to do? And typically, you know, there's a better way of doing something, you know.
So they also must have liked you, because
Well,
there's more to business than getting clients is just about solving a problem, right? You need to solve the problem without any doubt, but they do need to like who you are, or they need to relate to you in some way.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, business is all about people, and, you know, I was just talking earlier today, we were giving a presentation on the beach in Sano about pitch decks, right? So, and people make an opinion about, or form an opinion about you in the first 5 to 10 seconds, right? And also, companies consist of people, right? It's amazing how many people forget that. You know, even big corporates are created and formed by people, right? There are people in these big organizations, and it's all about that connection and the human connection, and, you know, people do business with people they like, right? As simple as that.
So you mastered that. So then obviously you had your first customer. You obviously went on after that and got other customers, or you wouldn't be sitting here today.
No.
Where did that lead you from then?
So this was kind of a really interesting phase for me, because I had that consultancy, but then one of my passions was, and you may have seen, was design and creativity and, you know, designers and all of that sort of thing. So one of the things that I wanted to do was to do a design-led business, because there was the technology, but that wasn't giving me the creative output, you know, the ability to get into the creative side. So at the same time, I was looking at setting up a design-led business. And one of the things that fascinated me was, these were in the days when, you know, online selling wasn't really that popular or hadn't really come out, was the idea of direct mail, actually direct response, which was really the original way that you could get non-linear responses. So if you think about exponential responses, you could put an advert out but get a non-linear response. You could get a lot more response than, you know, just by putting a single ad. So I experimented with that within the design field, and and it was interesting. I was selling designer cufflinks, right? So from incredibly complicated databases and trading systems to designer cufflinks, right? Completely opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Who would thought, right? And again, just getting that first order, off the page was just an amazing feeling, and it was just nice to be doing something completely different. And one of the things that I did around that sort of period as well is one of my passions was design, and not just design in terms of UI design. I think people think about design in a very one-dimensional way, but design can be applied to anything, right? Whether it's clothes, architecture, jewelry. And what I wanted to do is create a company which brought all of these things together. So I started a company. I started a gallery, a design gallery, in Knightsbridge in London. If people who know London, which is it's just down the road from Harrods, if you know Harrods. And I just did it, right? I was just passionate about it because I wanted to, be in that whole design field. And it was great because I was going to Milan and, going to all these amazing design fairs, interacting with designers and choosing all these products, and, and it was, really interesting. And got that going, it's a great sort of business, but decided that retail is a lot harder than people realize. Believe me, anyone has tried retail, it's really hard. But it was great to do. It was something that I wanted to do, and great experience.
Where's that at now?
I sold it. Yeah, I sold it. It was great to have done it, and it gave me the ability to work with designers. Work with, go to all these amazing design fairs and things like that. But just decided that having a retail wasn't for me, right? It wasn't scalable. It wasn't, it was just hard work. It was just really hard work. Had the opportunity, we were paying more and more in rent, and just decided, I'd take a different approach. Yeah. So sold that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So has anyone ever got out of a business and that was a good idea at the time, and now there's something different? Has anyone else done that other than me and Chandresh? It's interesting because you can go through life, and in particular it's a good message for everyone here, is that you can choose something that you think, like you said, that you have a passion for, and you think that you can create something amazing from. And it's not to say there's not a demand for it, it's just that maybe the passion's doesn't last, or there's something there that there's someone better that can do it than you.
I think it's just a business model. So, in those days I didn't really understand business models. In fact, I didn't really understand very much about business at all. I remember having a discussion with my accountant, and I was talking about this amazing business that I wanted to do, and he was talking to me about these figures, and I didn't really understand them, to be perfectly honest, right? I knew I wanted to do this thing, and the concept was great, but I just had the wrong business model. We probably could have, now I would do it very differently. And one of the things I've learned is, over time, is that you can have the great idea, but then with the wrong business model, you can have a great business model, but with the wrong idea, and with the right product, but to the wrong market. So I think I've gone through every permutation and combination of, right thing, but something not being right, and actually tried lots of different business models, and really learnt the advantages and disadvantages of all of them. So that's been a real learning, and I've tried lots of different things.
So to fast track it a little bit, so that we can make sure that we got enough time for questions from everyone, so just taking yourself back a little bit from where you are at the moment.
Sure.
Obviously there was a journey that got you to there, and there's a lot of steps that would have got you there. So what's something key, or actually probably explain where you are at the moment and some of the key lessons you've learned in getting to that level?
Sure. So one of the things that I learned is I was working on the Cohesia. Again, it was a services-based business model, and that has its downsides, right? So services-based businesses have particular issues around scalability and things. What I wasn't just naturally drawn towards were scalable businesses and business models. I didn't realize it. It was just something that was naturally something I was drawn to. I didn't realize why, but I wanted to have something which you could do something with a certain amount of effort, but then have a much more magnified, effect. And that's quite difficult with a service-based business. So then I looked at product-based businesses and started a company within the event sector, and that's still going. So that's one of the businesses in my portfolio, and that's an online software as a service company. So that I moved to a very different business model, and that's much more scalable. What I then discovered is that I actually took some time out to think about this. And I recommend everyone does this. If you're at that point where you're not quite sure, I actually took some time out and thought, well, what do I really enjoy, right? Because I wanted to, it's really important to focus. Everyone says focus, right? And I thought, well, I want to do all these things because one of the things that I see is opportunities everywhere, and that's a good thing, but that's a bad thing as well because you get distracted by all these things. And I saw all these amazing opportunities, and I thought, well, how can I focus on one thing? How can I just have one thing, but then do lots of things as well? So then to solve that problem, I thought there has to be a business model that allows me to do that. So I just approached it in that way. And to cut a long story short, basically my current business model is doing one thing, which is creating businesses. So that gives me the opportunity to work on multiple businesses. So I'm still just doing one thing, which is creating businesses. But the way that I work with those businesses and the business model allows me to multiply. So I don't get involved in the nitty-gritty and the running of those businesses. So with Kasia, we have a venture studio model, which is kind of a new concept, where we either co-create or create new businesses, get them to a stage, but then actually get a management team who run them. So that allows me to keep out of all the operational running of the business and to scale that. And that allows me to run multiple businesses. And so now we have, within the Kasia group, we have multiple businesses in different areas, which is fantastic, which is what I wanted to do. And I'm also looking at starting up a few more businesses, and allows me to keep involved at a very strategic level, but still be involved in multiple areas. So I'm still doing one thing, and really just focusing on what I'm good at, which is the strategy, having the vision, setting up the business, and giving strategic input, but allows me to spread that across lots of different interesting areas.
So we've got, if we think about Richard Branson for a moment, where he's got obviously multiple companies, and he's actually got a team now that makes a decision before it even gets anywhere near him as to whether something is viable to take on or to start something up. How do you work with things like that, or is that the decision that you make, or do your team do it with you, or how does it work?
The only way that you can have a successful business is basically by having a team, right? It's absolutely essential. And the way I design the businesses now is to create them with a view to basically them being able to be taken on by somebody else, right? So we design them in a way that they can be passed on, get somebody who's an MD who can then take it forwards. We have kind of a common structure as well, so there's some common resources that people can use, so within the businesses. And there's also synergy between them as well. But getting the right team and, just having that transition to, moving from proven concept to an operating team, and, getting the right people in to start it is the key transition point. And that's not easy, right? It's quite difficult, right? Especially, moving from a proven concept and then attracting the right team. It's difficult, but essential, right? Absolutely essential. And Richard, needs to do that. And everyone that has multiple businesses, or even if you don't have multiple businesses, if you want to move up a level, it's absolutely critical to get people who can then effectively do your job so you can move up a level.
It's absolutely essential to get the right people, and anyone who has had team or works with team existing, to get the right people is, once you have them, is really precious, and to keep hold of them. And the other good thing about this, and you may have experienced this as well, is that you tend to breed people similar like yourself who want to go off and do things for themselves as well. And that's a real positive. Have you had any working with you that have done that have ventured off and done things for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, so this model allows, and the reason why we created this model is that it allows people to have equity in the businesses.
Yeah.
So when we spin off an entity, the key management basically get an equity stake, so it is their business. And the way that we design those businesses to allow the key resources to have a stake. So, you know, by the nature of the business model, it allows them to do that.
Yeah.
And, you know, the people that have left have gone on to sometimes set up their own businesses, and that's great, because I kind of see that as a positive thing, because that means that you've got a great connection with somebody else, and, you know, it's all about network, right? So those people, we always, you know, wish them luck, and, you know, we still maintain great connections with them because it's a small world, and, you know, I absolutely wish them well, because in some way, you know, I've had some part in helping them to get to where they've got to, so I'm absolutely all for that.
So team is really important, and you mentioned too about how your businesses all have synergy. How important do you think that is when you're stepping up levels where you're looking at having multiple businesses, that there's some synergy between them?
I think it's, you know, there's tremendous strength in businesses that can support each other, because it's really difficult to get a business. You know, starting businesses is quite difficult, whereas if you have interconnections between them, it's all about having that network. Now, there's different ways of doing that. I mean, we do that through the other businesses that are within the group, but it's just as possible to do that with other partners. You know, that's the other way of doing it. So if you have a business, you don't need to have multiple businesses to achieve the same goal. You just partner with other companies, and it's a way of achieving the same sort of result. You know, there's strength in having a business which is providing something that, you know, your business isn't doing, and by having a combined proposition, it just gives your proposition much more value. And, you know, we're always linking in 2 or 3 different things. Just to give an example to make it real. So one of my businesses is in the event sector, events, exhibitions, conferences, right? And one of my other businesses is in the augmented reality, virtual reality space. So we, just some months back, we did had a stand at an exhibition, which is it's strange, it's an event for event organizers. And we had a combined stand where we had the augmented reality, virtual reality demonstrations, but showing applications for event organizers. So there's tremendous synergy between both of those. So you can actually bring all of those together. And I, you know, I'm always thinking about how you can merge different things and different disciplines, and, you know, from really abstract sources, right? I mean, Steve Jobs, you know, brought in influences from all sorts of places, like architecture and calligraphy, and I try and think like that. You know, it's not just from technology, but actually it's from anywhere, right? You know, you can get inspiration from the most unlikely sources, you know, from travel, right? Or from, you know, design or architecture or art, or, you know, all sorts of places. You know, you can bring in inspiration from all sorts of places. Yeah. One of the things that I did, which I didn't mention, is so I wanted to get involved in kind of hybrid and design and linking all of those. So one of the businesses I started was a collective group which was bringing together, and it was kind of artists, architecture, people in architecture, lighting designers, you know, technologists, art consultants, you know, a really sort of mixed bag of people. And we created this group of people, and we used to have these regular events where all these people would have all these creative collisions. You know, it's pretty cool, right? And we had all these people presenting, and it was really different disciplines. It was really cool. And we created this creative consultancy, and we had a really interesting mix of partners, where we had an architect, we had a lighting designer, we had a couple of art consultants, we had a technologist, and we did some really interesting projects. That's where we did some work on the James Bond movie. We did some work on the Quantum of Solace, where we're doing some really cool projection with using 3, 4, 5 different projectors onto solid objects. We did some really fascinating projects.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I thought I knew you really, really, really well, but obviously I don't. just leading on from that, and just we'll finish up after this so that we can open up to questions.
Sure.
How important is it, you think, that people in business nowadays keep up with technology and what's happening? It's such a changing world. How important is it that they know what's coming?
Okay, so anyone that doesn't think they're in either affected by technology or they don't have a technology business is really disillusioned. Everything will, in some form or another, will be affected by technology. Whether you like it or not, you may not like it, but it's going to be affected, right? So you may as well use that to your advantage rather than try and ignore it. So there are, it's better to ride the wave and be ahead of the curve and actually utilize, technology than try and shut your eyes to it. So I'd say to anyone, look at it as an opportunity. I mean, I get so excited, the world now and the opportunities and the things that you can do now is just absolutely phenomenal. I'm just like buzzing because I want to do so many things, and all of you should be so excited because there's just amazing things and amazing impact that you can create and just amazing businesses that you can create. If you're not into making money, there's amazing impacts because you can create positive change for millions of people by using technology. So if you think about technology as a way to achieve an outcome, why would you not use that? It's an incredible power that you have to achieve an amazing outcome. So why would you not want to do that, right? Why would you? So I just get so excited by what's coming, and the next 10 years are just going to be absolutely amazing. There's just so many things that are going to change, and 10 years, we'll look back at this recording, and I'm sure I'll be saying, yeah, I said that, because the world as we know it in 10 years' time will be completely different, and it'll be absolutely different.
Well, it's like when we look at when 3D printing was just being spoken about, which wasn't that long ago, really, and now look at it. It's like, so it's almost mainstream in so many places.
Will be,
yeah.
And we've talked, so as part of some of the talks that I've been giving, I've been talking about exponential technologies. So exponential technologies are the technologies which basically grow at an exponential rate. So they start off and they kind of don't look as though they're significant. So they start off on what looks like a very slow growth curve, but then they are doubling. The effect of it is doubling each time. And when you apply that doubling of, the impact, it goes up really fast. So it's like a scale which goes up. And the technologies which are doing that are just phenomenal because the cost is coming down significantly. The speed of those developments is just going up exponentially. And one of the things that I'm really focusing on is how you can harness those exponential technologies, which are moving at that pace, and how you harness those. And there's some incredible opportunities to do that. So definitely, areas that people should be looking at.
Awesome. So if there was 3 key things that you could give as a good takeaways, what would they be?
It's always difficult.
I know because I've been
difficult.
listening. So
yeah. 3 key things. Okay. It's all in the mind is one. Yeah. It's all in the mind, right? It all starts from within, right? It's not external. Work on the interior, work on your brain, right? It is all about mindset, I think. And I spend a lot of time working on mindset and keeping, my brain in the place where it needs to be. I think it's just so important. You can have the technical skills, you can have the resources, you can have everything. If your mind isn't in the right place or in the right frame, you just won't succeed. And it's simple as that, right? Yeah. It's all about the mindset, and if you have a mental block, then you're not going to succeed. So spend time working on yourself, on working on your mind, but also spend time working on state. I mean, I don't know if people are familiar with the concept of state, right? So keep in a positive mind state, which is difficult, right? You're on a commute and it's raining and they've cancelled the trains and all the rest of it, right? And it's hard to be in a positive state all the time. Of course it is, right? But if you can choose to be in a state and choose your state that will just open up possibilities. And if you look at everything with a positive frame, I know that sounds like kind of cliched, right? Glass half full, right? But it's true, right? And if you can always be working on your self-talk as well, I think a lot of people say things about themselves that, that keeps pushing them back, right? So be really conscious of the words that you're using all the time, right? Every single word that I'm thinking, I always try and catch myself saying, okay, but that's not true, right? So mindset and your own identity, people really need to understand what their identity is. And one of the things I would say is think about who you need to become to, who is the person that you need to be in terms of your personal identity to achieve the things that you want to achieve. Because human beings act inconsistent with the identity that they have, right? So you have a personal view of who you are and what you are, right? Now, if you have a vision and if you have an understanding that you are somebody that isn't going to succeed, then you're not going to succeed. Whereas if your identity is somebody that is an entrepreneur and is, going to achieve something, then the chances are that you will achieve that. So think in terms of your mindset, absolutely, critical. So that was one, I think. Or was that three? I think I tried cheating, didn't I? I think I bundled in a few there.
I think it was pretty much. It's probably that's what's overriding with everything, and I think everyone knows that. It's
absolutely all in the mind.
Yeah. It's your mind, and it's your purpose, and it's those things as well.
So the second thing is, just understand your big why. And again, I know this is kind of cliched, right? So if you want to succeed, you need to have some burning desire, right? You need to have something which is driving you. And you need to figure out what that burning desire is. That could be your family, it could be the bigger thing, but unless you've got that fuel, if you think about it in terms of fuel, and you've got some burning desire, it's going to be hard because you go through those ups and downs, and we've all been through some downs, and I have as well, been to the edge and back. So you need something which is going to give you fuel to basically get through those difficult times. So understand what that big mission is, and that may be something as simple as your family, or it may be something bigger. You may have a bigger mission, but understand what that fuel is, because it's that which will keep you moving. So absolutely critical to get that. And I have one more, is that right? Okay, one more, okay. I would say work on yourself and work on your so I don't know if people are familiar with this concept of locus of control, right? I don't know if you're familiar with, right? So I've always had what I call the locus of internal control, right? So I am the master of my destiny is the way I think about things, right? All the external environment may change, but I always think that I am always in control of the way I interpret those events, right? And what is going on around me. So always maintain that locus of control as an internal thing rather than as an external thing. Because I meet a lot of people who say, look at it the other way, this is happening to me, this is happening to me, these are events that are affecting me, So the locus of control is actually outside of them. Whereas if you have the control within yourself, and you have the confidence, and you've got the skills, and you build your skills, your knowledge, and your network internally, then people can take away everything else, right? And you can lose all your money, right? And stuff like that happens, right? But if you know that you have internal control, and you have the knowledge, the network, you can make it again, right? Yeah. You're not. Of course, it's not great to lose everything. I wouldn't recommend that, by the way. So don't say that I said that. That's a good thing, right? But you have that confidence to know that you can lose it, but then you can get back to where you are. So as long as you have that, the knowledge, the network, the confidence, within yourself, and you have the ability to control, your ability to interpret how you react to things, that puts you in an incredibly powerful position. So I know those are all the kind of soft things. I think it's always the softer things which are the most powerful. in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too often that we listen to people that say the business, you should be doing this and should be doing that. And they're things they should be, but I think this side of it is make or break. It's like if you don't get those three, then, you know, it can be break. So thanks, Chandresh. So what we're going to do is open it out to you guys to ask some questions. I know you've been quite covering most things, so hopefully we'll get some amazing questions coming from the group. So who has a question they would like to ask? Nick?
It's good to hear someone who's got their fingers in even more pies than I have. It sounds like a similar story, but I'm intrigued with everything you're seeing, everything you're doing, the involvement with tech, creative, all of that.
Sure.
If you could drop everything today and start the business that was going to be the business in 10 years, what would it be?
So start a business which was going to be...
Knowing what you know,
right.
And knowing that the future is tech,
Okay.
like it or not, knowing that AI and all these things are increasing at these insane rates, what's the one thing you throw yourself wholeheartedly into?
Yeah, so it would be the business that I'm going to be starting, which is next on my list. So the way I'm looking at it is how do you bring all those different waves and the strands together? And if we think about all these technology waves as the gold rush, right? So in the gold rush, who made the money, right? It was the people selling the shovels, right? Not the people who are trying to dig for gold. So one of the ventures I am basically building or working on is basically bringing, it's a new form, it's the next generation of crowdfunding, but actually focusing around exponential technologies, but also plugging in things like AI and machine learning. So where I see the greatest opportunities when you bring convergence to all of 2 or 3 of these different kinds of technologies, the power of the crowd, artificial intelligence, you know, all these exponential technologies, and bringing those together, digital currencies. So that's where I'm focusing, is how you gain even more leverage. If you imagine each one of these waves by themselves is amazing, but if you actually add all of them, then that gives you much more leverage. That gives you an amazing opportunity, because then you're riding this multiple wave. So I've got this new concept which I'm working on, which is bringing all of those together. That's my new venture. One of my new ventures. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
I think, you know, there is so much, you know, and again, I'm almost at that point, I think, where there's just too much going on to really know where to focus. So that's interesting that, you know, you really are looking at it and going, well, how can we pull these things together? And, you know, are you worried about being ahead of the curve? Are you figuring the curve is now right to jump on? Are you trying to be ahead of the curve?
So timing, okay, so timing is absolutely critical, right? So we talked in the sessions that I gave about timing being one of the most, probably if not but one of the most important things, and we've talked about this, right? Getting timing, it's, you know, it's a bit like surfing the wave, right? So this is like relevant to these guys in here, in Bali, right? Do you have surfers? If you get on the wave too early, then it's not going to work. If you get on too late, it's not going to work. So it's all about the timing and getting it just right. So yes, timing is absolutely critical, and then knowing the profile of that curve. There's something called a hype curve, and you know, people get into technologies at the top end of that hype curve and they lose a lot of money because it's not ready yet. It may not be a technology wave or in terms of timing, but the market may not be ready. The infrastructure may not be ready. So I remember years ago when people were setting up all these video-based businesses, infrastructure wasn't there, and they all went bust because they were reliant on high-speed internet. It just wasn't there. So timing of all those components, the technology, the market, the infrastructure, all of those things needs to be in place. Absolutely critical, yeah. One of the most important factors.
Without a doubt. I mean, I try and listen to all the clever people, and, you know, made an investment in cryptocurrency missing the first wave. Yeah. If I'd, you know, we're talking about a £50,000 investment. If I'd made it in December, I'd be sat on £1.5 million worth of profit if I'd put in what I put in, just £50,000 8 months ago. And then even the next month it was 1.3, the next month it was still one. The next month, even in April, in May, it was like, so that is it, right? But that's going to be a wave that keeps going up and down, and as you say, and that's the tough thing, isn't it? Trying to pick the winners in a race that's moving so fast. When we grew up, everything had its time. We used a tape, and the companies knew how to make the next thing, but they didn't make it because they wanted a lifetime of a product. We're almost tripping over ourselves going so fast to the future.
Things move much, much faster now. I mean, the rate of change is much, much faster, incredibly fast, right? The rate of change is growing exponentially as well. And now with, the world being completely interconnected, people are doing things because they're learning off each other across the internet. And just the rate of change is just significantly improving, so people need to move much, much faster. The other thing I would add in terms of timing is, as an innovator and as, somebody with kind of dynamo in wealth dynamics terms, we always think that, go out there and this is a great time to do it because, we all think that we're great innovators, but then the market sometimes just isn't ready for it. You have to wait sometimes to let people to catch up. So it's a really difficult thing to get right. And what I would say is that there's this concept of, I don't know, not many of you do ice hockey, right? So there's this concept of skating to where the puck is going to go, right? The puck is the little thing that you hit, right? Or maybe in football terms, right? Go to where the ball is going to be rather than where it is at the moment. So trying to get the timing so that you go to the point where it's going to be at the point when you launch, rather than where it is right now, and getting that timing right is really difficult. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Thanks, Nick. Who else has a question?
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Joshua.
Hey, Josh.
I will tell you my story very short in 1 minute, and then I will ask you to give me advice to me, okay?
I'll try.
Okay, at least. So I'm an entrepreneur for 20 years. I have built 4 multi-million euros worth companies back in Slovenia, from 30 to 100 employees.
Okay.
But the funny thing is that whenever I hit that break even and a big profit and so on, I did some stupid things and I lose most of the money. And 3 years ago, then I totally collapsed. I went into depression, very down, very, very, very down.
Right.
And then I found somehow the way out of that. And now I'm slowly building myself back, And I feel between myself that there is a great excitement, great passion to build another big story and so on.
Yes.
But there is still something that I don't see, because if I would see it, I would already be there, yeah?
Okay.
So that's it. So what is maybe from your feeling, from your perspective, that what I don't see yet?
So firstly, I would say, whenever something doesn't work, just look at it as a learning, right? Just think about what you did and when it didn't work. Why it didn't work, and what did you learn from that experience, right? What were the things that you did which weren't right that you can address? Secondly, think about what you did. Was that the right thing for you, right? Very often you get mentors and people saying, this is what you should do, right? Now that is good for them because they happen to be a particular type of person, they happen to think in a certain way, they happen to know a particular industry, and that might be right for them, but may not be right for you. So what I would say, evaluate what business you were in, evaluate the business model, just think about all the different things that you were doing, and just think about what worked, what didn't work, why it didn't work, and then apply that and just change those different parameters and think about your next venture as being a way of it's a reconfiguration basically by changing those parameters. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I've tried, as I said, different business models. I've tried partnership models, I've tried service-based business models, I've tried software as a service, all sorts of different business models. I've tried different industries, so it's a bit like a Rubik's Cube, right? You try, right business model, wrong product, right product, different, all of them. And all of them I've learned something from. Not just about the business, but about myself as well. And so if you think about what you learned from the business, but also what you learned about yourself, what you enjoyed, what you were good at, what you weren't good at, what the team did, how you built the team, what about the market, and really do that consciously, make a list of all the stuff and take that as learning and just look at it as prototyping. It is like prototyping. I just look at the whole thing as, as rapid iterations. It's like, lean startup, right? Start a business, see how it works, iterate, learn from it, iterations, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Joshua. Anybody else have a question over here?
Yeah.
Thanks, Arlene.
Hi, that was great. I love that. You talk about the interconnected world and, technologically and all that exponential development and everything that's going on. You can predict all that relatively. And then you talk about timing as if, it's the other aspect that happens, the things that are, that you don't expect in terms of timing. So, political upheaval or unrest in a country, a currency just goes bang, an election has a strange result, and then there's all of this other thing. And, you might have planned your timing. So is timing just like, not accidental, but is timing just luck? Like because, things like that can just be, as I say, from the blind side.
You're right. We can only control what we can control, right? So as long as you focus on what's within your control and minimize the risks of all the external factors, that's the best you can do, right? There are things you can do to address that, right? So if you know that an economy, for example, is in a downturn or is going through some difficult times, there's nothing stopping you from going to another country and setting up there. For every country that is at the bottom of the curve, there's another country which is on the up curve, right? And now it is just so much easier to start a global business. You can go and start. We're in Bali, right? Right? And most of you are probably from all over the place, right? And it's just a great example of entrepreneurs can now go anywhere, start businesses anywhere, and even find markets in different countries so much easier than it used to be. It is much, much easier to do. So I would say if that country is not in the right place, go and find another one, right? Because there will be one where it is the right place at the right time. But just minimize the risk. You can't, as much as I'd like to, I can't change the government. I'd love to change governments and the whole political system, but that's another discussion. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah. I think it's just that there is a huge flexibility now. It's just a willingness to actually try something else and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
If you have a purpose, if your purpose is there, it can't just be location specific. It has to be
the world
wider.
is absolutely your oyster.
Yeah.
I think it's very easy, and this happens a lot in the UK. I'm sorry to say. Yeah, sorry, guys in the UK. We really kind of think that this is the center of the universe, right? London is the center of the universe. Hey, there's stuff happening outside London. Yeah. There are amazing things happening outside London. Go and travel to Asia and travel to a place like here and the Far East and travel to China and Africa. There's so much stuff happening all around the world, right? There's amazing things going on around the world, and I love traveling because I get exposed to all these amazing entrepreneurs and amazing ideas, and highly recommend it. It's a great way of just getting new ideas, traveling, and just recognizing that there is amazing things going on in the world. So yeah, definitely. Don't think, okay, it's all here. There's a big world out there.
Thanks, Arlene.
Well, I'm amazed at everything you've been creating so far.
Oh, thank you.
It's like, wow. And I get a sense of what motivates you, and what motivates the creators is the energy of creating, and just keeps on rolling. Now, what is your main motivator for yourself that would relate maybe more to the world?
Sure.
That keeps you on creating the way you do?
Okay, so my massive transformational purpose is this concept of transformational entrepreneurship. Okay, so let me just explain that. So transformational entrepreneurship is basically applying entrepreneurship to bring about massive change. Because I think that technology and entrepreneurship has the ability to bring about an incredible scale of change in the world, positive change in the world. So we have people who are doing a lot of good, right? So you have people volunteering time and, charities doing really great work. But I think when you harness exponential technology, when you harness entrepreneurship, which are incredible leverages, right? The ability to leverage all these things, and also do that for good, and combine that with profit-based businesses. So I think people tend to think, okay, you either like profit or you're like super good, right? You're one or the other, right? And I don't think so. I think you can actually combine the two. You can be an amazing, highly scalable, exponentially based company and be purpose-driven and be making a difference and actually make a profit. Why can't you do all of them, right? So my driver is to build companies that are doing all of those, and also to bring about change, not through politics. Don't even get me started on politics. But actually bringing about, global abundance through transformational entrepreneurship. Because I think, and the reason why I'm aligned with Roger is because that's kind of his mission as well, bringing about change through entrepreneurship. But bringing about big change, right? So with exponential technologies, it's possible to affect millions of people, or billions of people. And generating profit actually is a lever. It enables you to bring about even bigger change. So that is one of the things that is my mission. And that, and also helping other entrepreneurs, and that is why I'm here. That's one of my passions, and that's why I get involved in the accelerator programs that, that we get involved with.
Well, I got a sense of that, and I'm glad to hear it in your words. So,
Sure.
yeah, that's a great way to approach it. Can I ask more?
Yeah, I think.
One more question and then we will finish up, I think. Yeah.
Okay. I had two, but that's okay. I might choose the one that's more maybe about me, what I'm interested to do in the world, and what I heard you talk about in the 3 keys. I relate to that immensely. I used to call myself an awareness coach. Now I'm gearing towards Joy Mentor.
Okay.
But it's like I'm clarifying things. That's why I'm doing Roger's program, and I'll do an iLab in November. And it's still a bit of a challenge to get the purpose clear in the world of entrepreneurship for me, for who I am, where I'm coming from. And I do see that a product or something that people can relate to in a tangible way for what I'm talking about, which is consciousness or awareness, would be a key to really reach out to more people.
Okay.
And it's that sense of, okay, where I'm coming from, how do I get to clarify my head enough to create a product, and what would be the keys to really get somewhere with something that people would relate
Somewhere with
to.
something, that's the problem, right?
That's the problem. I know I'm not being clear, but that's
Where?
my issue. So that's why I'm attempting to bring more clarity.
Yeah,
So what would be keys that would allow me, for where I'm coming from?
So just imagine you're going to a travel agent, right? You're going to a travel agent and you say, I want to get somewhere, right? And they go, yeah, but where? And you say, I want to get somewhere, and how do I get there? And they say, okay, but where do you want to go? Right? So depending on where you want to get, so the starting point is getting mental clarity. Clarity is absolutely critical, right? Now, clarity is actually difficult to get. Clarity you can work on, but you're not going to get that by meditating and concentrating on your navel and, right? Clarity sometimes comes from you taking a prototyping approach, right? You try something, you go to an environment, you actually try things and see if they fit sometimes. And then things start becoming clearer. You might think you want to do something. I've thought that I wanted to do certain things, and then I've tried them, and then I thought, actually, that's not what I want to do. So I would say, just bring it down to a narrow focus, try and get a list of things and, a couple of areas, and actually see if that fits and that feels right, because it's all about it feeling right for you, and you'll know when it kind of feels right, because when you try it is one of the best ways of experiencing it. You trying to choose in a vacuum is not going to work, right? So that's the first thing. And then once you figure out where you want to get to, then the vehicle will become a lot clearer, right? So if you want to get from here to Sanur, you need a very different vehicle. If you want to get from here to Africa, you need a different vehicle. If you want to get from here to Mars, you need a very different vehicle, right? Very, very different approaches. But really, clarity is absolutely critical, yeah. But clarity comes from, going to places, experiencing things, and putting yourself in the position where you get a feel for whether it fits. It's a bit like trying on clothes, You try them on, and then you think, actually, maybe that doesn't suit me.
Yeah, well, I'm with you on that, because one of the things that we talk about for what I do is like every choice creates more awareness.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in summing it up, yeah, I get that. So, yeah, okay, choosing.
Great. But
Thank
do
you.
something. Do something. Don't spend
Yes.
your life choosing, right? There are people that I come across, and I met them like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and they're still choosing. It's like, I'm still trying to find my life's purpose, and it's like, go and do stuff. Don't spend your life, it's like every minute is going by. You are running out of time, right? The clock is ticking. Go and do stuff, don't spend your life trying to figure out what you're going to do, and go and do stuff, right? So definitely, only have a certain amount of time, go and do stuff.
Beautiful. Thank you for your questions, and I hope everyone has had an amazing night. Let's give Chandresh a round of applause.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you very much.
So I'm sure that you're around for 5 minutes, 10
I am,
minutes
absolutely.
maybe, if everyone wants to have a chat. So thanks for coming along tonight, and I hope to see you at the next one. Our next one is actually on the 20th of September is our next startup grind. So I hope to see those of you who are in Bali here. I know some of you won't be, but there's definitely startup grind in a vicinity near where you are. So please do attend and get online and watch some of the other videos as well. Thanks again.
Thank you, Terry. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks all for coming. Yeah.